Cool. Okay, hello everyone. Excuse me while I pull out some very unrelated bread from the oven. My name is Wesley Wu. This is Wu Can Cook. Hermina, yes, how's it going? Brand new mic. I am so stoked. We can see it. New mic on the lapel. Also new camera equipment too. So new camera and new mic that are kind of related, and I'm going to explain it in a minute too. But yeah, hello to everyone. If this is your first time tuning in, this is Wu Can Cook. We're here streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. Today we're doing a special stream that's loosely called Wu Can Cook Whatever You Tell Me to Cook, which is essentially where I do a poll over on the YouTube channel, and we take a poll of like the top 5 things that people want me to put into a random stir fry that's just based off of the things that are in my refrigerator, and we throw something together. I took a quick poll, and folks voted for a couple of things. Probably the one thing that stood out most to me is that folks asked me to use egg roll wrappers, raw egg roll wrappers, which kind of seems a little weird, but that's actually a thing. That's something that you actually do in Chinese food. We do it with a dish called mushu pork, and we wrap it in kind of like a tortilla. And very often you can actually substitute it out with flour tortilla. So we're essentially going to be making mushu pork, but with a couple of weird substitutes because of interesting things that folks asked for. So one of the main things that a lot of people were asking me to throw in were some Shanghainese flat noodles, which don't really go into mushu pork, but we could probably do it, and it's probably going to work fine. And I'm kind of thinking along the lines of another dish that's very, very closely related to mushu pork, which is called he cai dai mo, which is actually what my mom used to make. And it includes noodles, but it doesn't include flat noodles. It includes vermicelli rice noodles, and I was secretly hoping people would ask for the vermicelli rice noodles, but they didn't. So we're going to do that today. If you have any questions for me, feel free and drop your questions in the chat. I don't know everything about mushu pork or really anything, but if you ask, I will hopefully be able to help. Yes, so to answer your question, Hermina's question, over on YouTube we've been crowdfunding some money so that we can replace the dumb microphone that streams to the Reddit stream, which lots of folks, Tom Dog, how's it going? Yeah, lots of folks watch on Reddit too. The reason that we've been trying to replace that microphone is because it keeps crapping out. So lots of people, if you've ever watched this stream before and gotten like weird feedback, it kind of sounds like I'm underwater. That's because I've been talking into a mic on that stream that was made in the 80s. And wireless technology was not perfected in the 80s. It was perfected well after the 80s. So today we're talking into a brand new Rhodes Go mic, which is this microphone. It's very wireless, it's very crystal clear. I'm super stoked for it. And we have a couple other fun pieces of new gear that are enabling me to send this microphone to both streams. So we'll dive into that in a bit. Fun tech talk. But for now, today we're going to be diving into our mushu pork. Yay. Good camera work, yeah, thank you, yeah. Cool. So mushu pork, if you're not familiar with it, actually is a pretty relatively common dish that comes from American or like Chinese American cuisine. It probably has some original origins in like Chinese street food, but I'm not 100% sure about that. Where I mostly know it from, actually I mostly know it from how my mom used to make it. But where other folks probably know it from, mostly from, is from like a lot of like Chinese American food. So you see it a lot in like places like P.F. Chang's. So not necessarily in places like Panda Express, but like fancier Chinese American places. Because mushu pork is very, very often you'll find it ordered as like part of like a family style like restaurant order. So you like, because it comes in a big platter and you can kind of split it between a whole bunch of people. You could probably get a platter that serves like 10 people or something. Which, now that I think about it, probably why my mom made it. Very, very often you see it a lot in a lot of Chinese American like family style restaurants. What it essentially is a big old vegetable stir fry with a bunch of pork, like bits of pork in it. And the bits of pork is the real kicker, because it kind of like changes the whole game, because we're going to be using some pork chop. We're going to be diving into that in a second. But the real key to a mushu pork is that it doesn't have any. There's no one specific thing that you need to throw into a mushu pork. So some of my favorite things to throw in include things like bean sprouts and carrots, probably some zucchini I would probably include at some point. But probably the most important thing is going to be some pork chops. But other than that, you can throw any kind of vegetable that you want. And as it so happens, I'm missing a lot of vegetables today because we're doing this weird stream where we're basically cooking up the remaining things in my refrigerator on Thursday before we go grocery shopping. So today we don't have any carrots. We also don't have any zucchini, and we don't have. We do have some bean sprouts, but they're looking a little old, so we're going to be doing a weird, like, leftover stir fry and throwing all of that together. So, as weird as that sounds, that's actually a pretty common and like important aspect of how like a lot of not just mushu pork, but a lot of Chinese food in general is created. It's just mainly made out of like necessity of like how to use up leftovers. So as with a lot of stir fries, we're starting out by crushing and mincing. That was 4 cloves of garlic, followed by this is going to be about a tablespoon or 1 inch's worth of finely minced ginger. Yeah, oh, nice camera set. Yeah, thank you. How many people was my mom cooking for? It kind of went back and forth. Most commonly, it would be my brother and I, plus my dad, so the 4 of us. But if you, I don't know if you've ever tried to feed 2 teenage boys, but we were basically feeding an army because we were eating so much. So she would make like a big old like 12-inch platter. That would generally be enough to feed at least like 6 to 8. We would pretty much eat the whole thing. So, but yeah, we also like used to like that was a really common thing for us to make on like Chinese New Year when we'd have like the whole family over, and then you can make like a really big platter of it, and you could probably feed like 20 people with something like that. Yeah, cool. Sounds amazing. Oh, cool. Yeah, do I work as a chef? Sort of. I do. I run a virtual kitchen now on an app called Chef, and we basically do home delivery. So if you're here in the Bay Area, you can actually order a lot of the food that I cook on stream. You can order on Chef, which is pretty cool. And this camera will automatically shut off after every 30 minutes. Every 30 minutes, it's gonna happen. Yeah, definitely. Mushu pork when I was a kid was one of my favorite things to eat. So next up, one of the probably more common things that you would see thrown into a mushu pork would be a sweet white onion. So you would probably see me chopping up like really thinly sliced white onion. Today I actually don't have any white onion, so but this is actually one of the things that folks requested was that I throw in a random onion. And I don't actually have enough onion to do that. What I do have is half of a purple onion. I usually use this in like salads and stuff. That's why there's an avocado in here. But today we're gonna make use, and I actually think it's gonna work just fine. The reason that I normally would not use a purple onion though in a mushu pork stir fry like this is because it's gonna be a little bit more pungent and it's gonna be like a little bit more like aggressive and like in your face a little bit. So like as opposed to if we were using a sweet white onion, which is going to be a little bit more tame and not quite as like fragrant and like a little bit abrasive on the nose as a purple onion is. So in order to combat that, what I like doing, or my favorite way of avoiding or at least taming down some of that abrasiveness is just making sure that we chop the onion really thin. And that's going to sort of like make sure that we're not getting huge bites of onion and therefore not getting huge bites of like really aromatic and abrasive onion. So I'm going for as thin as I possibly can. This is like maybe like a 1/3 of an inch, maybe even less than that. Very thin. Throwing some avocado, yeah. Whoa, 3,000 watches. Well, that's new. It looks like we're on the top broadcast. I haven't hit the top broadcast in a while, so. So this is our purple onion. We're gonna throw this into our wok fry, and what we're gonna try and do is reduce it quite a bit. So we don't want like pretty crunchy onions the way that you would normally see in wok fries. Because if you try and throw a purple onion into a wok fry and keep it crunchy the way that we normally would with a large diced sweet white onion, it's gonna be way too abrasive, so we don't wanna do that. So we're making some adjustments to accommodate for the weird shit that you guys told me to put into this thing. So. All right, so next up is some cabbage, and cabbage is actually one of my very, very favorite filler veggies. So if you don't have as many vegetables as you need to throw into a stir fry like we're doing today, cabbage is my favorite thing to throw in because it will fill up the space and kind of like fill out a dish without really doing anything. Cabbage doesn't taste like anything, right? So it won't really, it's not gonna make it taste better, it's not gonna make it taste worse, it's just gonna like add like volume to the dish basically. So it's one of my favorite things to add if you're like short on dishes. So just like the onions though, I'm gonna cut this stuff pretty thin. Keeping in mind that our cabbage is going to reduce in volume quite a bit, probably like at least by half, if not more, once we start cooking it. So just like a lot of veggies, so just like onions and like bok choy, anything that's leafy, cabbage is mostly filled with water. So once you start cooking it, that water is going to eventually boil off. And then once it cooks off, all of the volume in your cabbage is going to cook off. But yeah, also one of my very, very favorite filler ingredients. Also, for the same reason that you very often will see it used in a lot of like Korean street food. So like Korean egg stuff or like random egg dishes. You'll see them throwing in a lot of cabbage. And that's because it's a really, really good filler ingredient. It doesn't taste like anything, but it makes like for a more hearty dish. So I'm just giving this a wash, and then we're going to shake out all of this water. We don't want any of this water left behind because that's going to cause problems in our wok. So if I was really committed, we could probably get like a salad spinner and like really shake the dickens out of this stuff. Make sure that there's no water left, but that's generally fine enough for me. Also make sure you don't end up with your cabbage course in there. Yeah. What are we cooking? Oh yeah, good question. Hello to everyone just tuning in. Today we're cooking a mushu pork. We're kind of winging it a little bit because we're cooking based off of a poll that I took over on the YouTube channel. So if you're watching on Reddit, there's a YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. And not every Thursday, but a lot of Thursdays, you'll see me taking polls. And what we're essentially doing is I'm posting all of the ingredients that are in my refrigerator. And then I'm asking you to vote on them, and then we're gonna cook. I'm gonna throw a recipe together based off of the things that are in my refrigerator, or based off of the things that you guys asked me to cook up. So as it so happens, probably the thing that stood out to me the most when I saw what people were asking me to throw in were egg roll wrappers, which we have left over. These are egg roll wrappers. These actually aren't egg roll wrappers. These are technically lumpia wrappers, which I will talk about later. I'm guessing that a lot of people thought that that was unusual to throw into a wok stir fry, because why would you ever throw in raw vegetables, raw egg roll wrappers into a stir fry? But it's actually super common in a dish called mushu pork. Yeah, sure, let's go. So yeah, if you haven't checked that out yet, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel. We do lots of polls and fun stuff like that. And a lot of the Thursday streams that you see me streaming are based off of things that people request on the polls. Yeah. So this is some cabbage that I'm chopping up. Or sorry, not cabbage, this is some cucumber. The reason that I'm using cucumber, again, is for the same reason that we were using cabbage, is because what I really wanted to add was some zucchini, but we don't have any zucchini, so I'm using some cucumber instead, which is actually, again, relatively common in a lot of Chinese stir fries, definitely very commonly found in mushu pork. So I'm just giving this a quick julienne cut. That was actually one of my better julienne cuts. How to do it. Cool. Oh, you like the gift recipes? Yeah. 4,000 watchers. Yeah, thank you. That's new. I'm guessing that we're at the top broadcast right now, which is cool. I haven't hit top broadcast in a while, so. But I'm always very grateful to see these streams hitting top broadcast. It's super fun. All right. Let's go over this cabbage. Yeah. So that's our cabbage. Just freeing up our strainer. And then the next thing that we're going to throw in, and in my opinion, this is probably one of the most important ingredients to mushu pork. After pork, obviously, I think that the use of bean sprouts is probably one of the most important vegetables that you need to throw into a mushu pork. If you don't have bean sprouts, it's probably going to be a little weird. It's definitely not going to be super authentic. So. I say this pretty much every time that I use bean sprouts though, but one thing that we want to pay attention to when we use bean sprouts is that they are quick to spoil. So if you ever bought bean sprouts, you'll know that they pretty much will start spoiling within like maybe a week or so. But they are really, really good like filler veggies, so I love throwing them into stir fries and stuff like mushu pork or really anything that calls for some veggies. As it so happens, these bean sprouts are pretty old. I think they're like coming up on 2 weeks. And they were the same bean sprouts that we used in the beef chow fun stream that was on Monday. Was that on Monday? Yeah, that was on Monday. And at that time, they were already like a week and a half old. So that kind of like a frame of reference, they're getting pretty old. And you can definitely tell because they don't really have much volume. So you see how they're sort of like falling flat like that? That's generally a sign where like if these were fresh bean sprouts, they would probably be sitting like up here. And that's because they sort of like started shedding their water and they're kind of going limp. That's because they're starting to spoil. So I think at this point, these bean sprouts are still okay. But if you start noticing that your bean sprouts are turning like mushy, that's probably a sign that you need to throw them out. Ew, yeah, no. Brandina, that's absolutely right. It is really gross. If you've ever seen spoiled bean sprouts, it's super gross. Cool. So next up, I'm going to rehydrate a bunch of different mushrooms. And this is actually one of the requests that came from the channel. I didn't specify what kind of mushrooms I had. Maybe intentional, maybe not. But I generally have, at any given point in time, a whole bunch of different kinds of mushrooms. So I have a couple of types of fresh mushrooms, but today, because I actually think it's really, really important to a mushu pork, we're going to be using a couple of different types of dried mushrooms instead, which are always fun and useful to keep in your pantry. Oh yeah, Sarah, yeah, the documentary on the Chinese American cuisine around the American Railroad. Yeah, I think maybe what you're referring to is the Search for General Tso, or at least that's the documentary that I watched, and it's really good. That's one of my favorite documentaries. I believe it was on Netflix, and it's basically, well, it's like framed around like tracking down the origins of General Tso's chicken, the Chinese American dish. But what it's really about is just like kind of tracing down like how Chinese food ended up in America. And it sort of like went on to inspire the YouTube series that I started, where we like deconstruct a lot of like Chinese food that like come from Chinese American food. One of which was the General Tso's chicken from Panda Express. And that's sort of like where the original inspiration from that series came from. Cool. So here are mushrooms. I'm going to rehydrate this. This is in some boiling water. This is I think there's five shiitake mushrooms, and then the other big ones in there are some wood ear mushrooms. Actually, I think this is black fungus. But what's really cool about wood ear and black fungus mushrooms actually is that they're really, really large. So they have this huge surface area. So when these wood ears hydrate, they're going to be like maybe 3 or 4 inches wide, which right now is crazy because it looks like this. But once it starts rehydrating, it sort of like starts spreading out, and they're really crazy looking mushrooms. And also really, really tasty to thinly slice up and then throw into a wok stir fry. So we're gonna let that rehydrate. This will probably take, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes. Yeah. Cool. Sea nugget, oh, hot pot, yeah. I would probably try and do hot pot at some point. Hot pot is another one where it's like not really anything specific. You could put whatever you want into a hot pot. There's only like a couple of things that you absolutely have to have, probably some beef. But other than that, you can do a whole bunch of random things that you can throw into a hot pot. This is our pork chop. This is a boneless pork chop. There's no real reason why you need to use a bone-in pork chop. The reason that bone-in pork chops are very, very useful, if you ever do come across a bone-in pork chop, is because when the bone is still inside of your pork chop, it helps the pork chop retain a lot of moisture and juice. So if you try and say honey glaze and then pan fry a pork chop, for example, it's very useful to have a bone-in pork chop for that purpose, because you can get a lot more juicy qualities out of your pork chop. For ours today, however, since we're just going to be thinly slicing it like this, you might as well just use a boneless pork chop because it's a lot cheaper for starters. Also, you don't have to cut around that bone, and it's not going to make a difference whether or not there's a bone in it because you're going to thinly slice it anyway. So these are some boneless, but if all you have is some bone in, you can totally just use bone-in pork chop too. Just figure out what to do with that bone. Definitely don't throw the bone out. You can make some stock from that. Yeah. Trip Deuces. Oh, you just subscribed on YouTube. Cool, yeah. Hello to everyone on Reddit. Yeah, if you haven't yet, definitely subscribe over on YouTube too. We're also concurrently live streaming over on YouTube, so that would be the laptop behind me. That's also where the schedule of streams lives, so if you're looking for what I'm going to be cooking next, I believe that schedule goes out almost 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks now. I forget. So if you were watching over on YouTube, you would have known that I'd be doing this stream a couple of weeks ago. Cool. That's also where we do the polls and stuff too. So if you're trying to play a part in how I'm going to be cooking the things that I cook on Thursdays, that's a good place to pop over. All of those polls are posted over on the community tab, and I've been asking folks to vote on things that I'm going to cook. All right, so that's our pork. For the pork, I'm going to do a couple of things in the marinade. I actually think that the marinade is going to be pretty important for this particular dish. Very, very often you'll see me say that I'm not going to do very much with the marinade because the sauce element already has a lot of things going on. In this particular case, I actually think it's going to be really, really important because there's not very many things going on in our sauce today. North Star Mike, oh yeah, is there video content on the YouTube channel? Yeah, yeah, I guess I didn't mention that. Every Friday, so there's a new recipe. So first off, we're streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, both on Reddit and on YouTube. And then every Friday, there's a new recipe video that comes out. So most of the time when you're watching me cooking something on stream, I'm probably cooking something that's for a recipe that we already did. So this mushu pork, so this particular mushu pork is for a PF Chang's hack that I had done. That was part of a larger series where I've been reproducing a lot of Chinese American classics. So yeah, if you're looking for those, they all live over on YouTube, which is youtube.com/WooCanCook, YouTube channel, bottom of the screen. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, what range? Yes, the range behind us, you can take a look. Here's my wok behind us. We're going to be cooking on this gas range. It's just a standard home burner gas range. Nothing special about it. And I'm going to be explaining, actually a mushu pork is a really good example of how to cook on a wok on a gas range in your home. Lots of people think that you can't cook on a gas range and can't cook on a home burner in a wok, which is absolutely not true. You can of course cook on a wok. But we just have to approach the wok cook a little bit differently. And we're going to be using a thing or a process called batch cooking in our wok fry today. And is actually super, super important in a mushu pork in particular, more than other recipes that we've done, because a mushu pork is very, very ingredient heavy. And if you don't batch cook properly in a mushu pork stir fry, you're gonna end up with a very, very mushy stir fry. Yeah. Cool. Sarah, you're loving the random recipe. Yeah, I'm loving doing it. It's super fun. It's a very fun, like, weird way of forcing me to figure out new things to cook. So the last time that we did one of these, folks asked me to put potatoes into a stir fry, and what I ended up doing was cooking a Korean dish. It's a Korean side dish called, I'm probably not pronouncing this right, but I believe it's gamja joram, something like that. And it's essentially a sweet glazed Korean potato. That was one of the things that I actually did on the live stream, and I ended up redoing it and doing it better, basically. That's going to be a recipe that's coming out in a couple weeks. So that's cool. Folks are forcing me to write new recipes that I've not done before, like Korean potatoes. From Buttman, that's a good username. Yeah, so in the sauce in the marinade, that was 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of sesame oil, and that was 2 tablespoons of hoisin sauce, which hoisin sauce, if you're not familiar, is probably one of the big ingredients that's derived from Chinese American food because it's like very, very sweet. So I think of it as like Chinese ketchup because it's so sweet. And that was, lastly, that was about like half a teaspoon of white pepper. So before I forget though, if you are looking for the recipe, that's over on the YouTube channel. So if you're trying to follow along, and I oftentimes will forget to say things because I'm talking about something else. The recipe video has all of the ingredients laid out, so it kind of talks a little bit slower. I definitely don't tangent as much, and I definitely won't forget to mention things. So that was, anyway, that was half a teaspoon of white pepper. And then we're just gonna toss this to combine and let it marinate. If you're really committed, this should marinate for at least 30 minutes. And this is not gonna marinate for 30 minutes. I'm not gonna give it that long. Probably will go for like maybe 10 minutes. Oh yeah, and that was also 2 tablespoons of that was Shaoxing wine, which is a Chinese cooking wine. So not mirin, but Shaoxing wine. Cool, so that's our pork. I'm just giving that a toss. We're gonna let that marinate. That will go for about maybe 30 minutes. Maybe we should go for 30 minutes. Probably will actually go for like closer to 15 minutes. Maybe even less than that. Next up, I'm going to circle back to our mushrooms here so you can take a look at our wood ears. These have hydrated quite a bit, and our shiitake mushrooms have also hydrated quite a bit. So we're just going to thinly slice these. Yeah. Acrobatic bike. Oh yeah, what days do we stream? Yeah, we're streaming every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. It has changed a little bit, so if you keep missing them, that might be because I changed it recently. But Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST, and it is always at 6:30, right around dinner time if you're in California. And that's over on YouTube and Reddit, so you can catch them on either place. With new recipes, the new recipes are on the YouTube channel every Friday too. So I'm slicing these up. We're going pretty thin here. I'm looking for like long, thin strips of mushroom here. We're gonna do the same for our shiitake mushrooms too. And next for our shiitake mushrooms, this is really important if you have really, really thick shiitake mushrooms. Mine don't really have very much stem because these are like boutique mushrooms. But if you have really, really thick mushrooms, they take a lot longer than 5 minutes to hydrate. They will probably take like closer to 20 or 30 minutes. And very often will have a very, very thick stem. This one actually has a little bit of a stem. The stem, you can probably eat the stems of shiitake mushrooms. I generally like to cut them off because they tend to be a lot more chewy and different in texture than the cap of the mushroom. So you can leave it on if you want, but I generally will cut that stuff off. But don't throw it out. I like to save it. I usually will throw it in my freezer bag, and then that ends up going into my stocks, my veggie stocks. Shiitake mushrooms, super, super important for veggie stocks. No Shaoxing wine. Yeah, so there was that was 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine that went in. If you don't have Shaoxing wine, it's essentially just dry cooking sherry, which if you're in the States, generally a little bit easier to find, or especially I guess in Europe too. You probably find that stuff in Europe. If you can't find either, probably the next best thing. My favorite sub, if you can't find either, is usually dry sake, which is like I guess the equivalent from Japanese cuisine. But I would imagine if you can't find Shaoxing wine, you probably can't find dry cooking sherry. You probably can't find dry sake either. Yeah. Cool. Courtney, am I adding wontons? No wontons today. I should have got wontons. I don't have any wontons. That would be fun though. Yeah. Cool. So that's our mushrooms. And then the last thing, let's do these eggs real quick. The last thing I'm gonna set up before we head over to the stove, are 2 eggs, which if you do them correctly, should not have shells on them. And then we're just gonna whisk these to combine. What I like doing, you generally will see me doing this anytime that we're cooking eggs in a wok. What I usually like doing is adding 2 things to wok fried eggs. The first is going to be a single tablespoon of Shaoxing wine. The Shaoxing wine in your eggs is generally going to be the thing or that flavor that you associate with wok fried eggs. So it's like a little bit bright, a little bit sweet, and then it's going to be really, really smoky from the wok fry. And then the last thing, which is going to be probably the most important thing in these eggs, is going to be maybe half a teaspoon, maybe even a little bit less than that. And that's just plain old cornstarch. And what's gonna happen is, so when you cook in a wok, it's going to be a lot hotter than any other pan that you've probably tried to cook an egg in. Especially if you're cooking scrambled eggs. Very, very often when you cook scrambled eggs, you might be doing it in something like a non-stick pan or something that's over like medium to medium-low heat. When you do this in a wok, it's going to be ripping hot. So it's going to be so hot that these eggs are probably going to cook maybe like 5 seconds, maybe even less than that. So what we like doing, this is going to be the case for most eggs that are cooked in a wok, is you add a little bit of cornstarch, and that cornstarch is going to slow down the exterior cook time of the eggs. So by slowing down that exterior, so the surface area of the eggs, it kind of will let the whole egg cook all the way through before it starts overcooking on the exterior. So if you don't add that cornstarch, very often, if you've ever had eggs that were wok fried that are like a little bit rubbery and like overcooked almost, that's because it cooked too fast and it didn't have enough cornstarch in it. So by adding that little bit of cornstarch, it just slows down the cook time just enough where we can let things catch up. And I'm actually going to do the exact same thing for our pork too, for the same reason. Yeah. Oh, you have class on Monday and Wednesday, but Thursdays are tight. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, Thursday is going to be the funnest stream because we're probably going to be doing this a lot. So that's generally where I'm going off book. I'm winging it. All right, so I just added, I did the exact same thing to our pork. I just added half a teaspoon of cornstarch. And that's just like the eggs, it's gonna slow down the exterior cook of our pork, just long enough so that the interior of the pork can cook all the way through. Yeah, are you kidding? Also a good username. Are you kidding me? Yeah, if you ever can't like figure out why your eggs were turning really rubbery in your stir fries, that's probably why. It's because it didn't have any cornstarch in it. And I've had so many wok fried eggs that turned out like that, where it just like super, super rubbery, definitely overcooked, and like almost like browned. Sometimes it will even burn, where it will like start turning black on the exterior. All of those are things that we don't want to happen in our wok fried eggs. So what we're going to do with our eggs today is we're going to add this to our wok at the very, very end. And then we're going to make what I like to refer to it as like a sort of like an egg pancake. And that's going to be the thing that we add at the very top. So we're going to top the whole stir fry with an egg. Over on the stove, I just switched the camera actually. So over on the stove, I'm heating up my wok here. We're gonna get that thing ripping hot before we start cooking.
Hopefully that's working.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Cool. There we go. Alright. We have cameras. Yeah, we do. Okay, cool. Sorry, I'm testing out some new equipment today, and that was a weird problem to have. But we do have two cameras again, so we have a stove camera. Alright. So over on the stove, I'm reheating my wok. We're getting that thing ripping hot, and then we're going to start cooking in it. Yeah. Mother of Goose, yeah, so you should be seeing the vlog right now, yeah. What I was trying to fix is it wasn't sending to the YouTube channel, so I had to fix that first. Cool. So, let's do it. So my wok is about as hot as it can possibly get, and what we're going to do here, so this is a really, really important aspect of wok frying. When you're cooking on a home range, it's a process that we call batch frying. So essentially what we're going to do is cook certain elements and then remove it and then cook the next element, and then remove that and cook the next element, and so on. And what we're essentially trying to do is make sure that the wok at no point in time reaches a point where everything is in the wok all at once. So this is something that you won't necessarily see chefs doing at restaurants, because those ranges are burning a lot hotter than most home ranges will burn. So they don't actually need to do that because they're not going to actually lose that much heat in the wok, because it has so much more heat on those burners. So in our home ranges don't go as hot as those restaurant burners, so we don't have the ability to cook like that. So we have to use a process that's called batch cooking. You will very often will see me skipping the batch cook in a lot of wok fries if it doesn't have very many ingredients, so a lot of like noodle dishes and things where we're only handling like 1 or 2 proteins or something. Very often I'll like push it and like maybe I should be batch frying, but maybe we can get away with not doing it. In a mushu pork like this, however, it is really, really important to do that batch cook because there are a lot of ingredients. So if you've been watching since the beginning, you just saw me chop up like all of those different veggies. So there's bean sprouts, there's cabbage, there's 2 different kinds of mushrooms, there's some carrots going in, and then there's some pork. All of those things, they're going to overload the wok if we just add all of them in at once. So if you've ever had a wok stir fry that's really, really porridgey and it kind of has the consistency of oatmeal, that is happening because the wok is not retaining enough heat. So the way that we solve that is using batch cooking. So what we're going to do is we're adding, starting off with our almond. So this is going to be 4 tablespoons of peanut oil, and then we're just going to coat our wok in that oil. And then first up is going to be our aromatics. So this is our ginger and our garlic. Then we're going to blend this just long enough until it becomes fragrant. For me, that's usually about 10 seconds, but use your nose at this point. When you start smelling ginger and garlic, you know you're ready. Back up, yeah, thoughts on the cast iron wok. Yeah, so if you can handle it, cast iron wok is one of my favorite things. So what's tricky about a cast iron wok is that it will weigh, no kidding, like 30 pounds. So and you can't do stuff like this. You can't like toss the wok. So if you don't mind not being able to toss it, it's totally one of my favorite types of wok. And probably it would be the very first thing that I always recommend. If you're cooking on an electric top range, cast iron wok is probably the best thing. I have not actually tested that theory because I haven't cooked on the electric range in a long time. But I think the cast iron will solve that problem. So this is our pork going into the wok. And then I'm just going to give this a flash cook. That's going to take maybe 5 minutes, maybe a little less than that, probably like 3 or 4 minutes. Yeah, am I Chinese American? Yes, I am. Jap Nipple, good username too. I love reading the weird usernames on Reddit. I am Chinese American. Oh, I guess I'm Taiwanese American. Yeah. What's on the menu? Yeah. Hello, if you're just tuning in. This is Wu Can Cook. If you're watching on Reddit, we're also streaming on the YouTube channel, which is the YouTube channel at the bottom of the screen. Today we're doing a series that we've been doing on a lot of Thursdays, not every Thursday, but like a lot of different Thursdays, which is called Wu Can Cook Whatever You Tell Me to Cook. But essentially what I've been doing is taking these polls over on YouTube and posting all of the ingredients that are in my refrigerator and then making some kind of recipe that's based off of the things that folks ask me to put in. Based off of the polls that we took earlier this week, I think that was on Tuesday, one of the things that stood out to me the most was people wanted me to use egg roll wrappers, which is actually a very, very commonly used ingredient in a Chinese pork. So today we're doing a riff off of a mushu pork recipe that I had written based off of the APF chains hack that was part of this larger series that I've been doing over on the YouTube channel, where I've essentially been like reproducing a lot of foods from Chinese American classics, so places like PF Chang's, Panda Express, things like that. Kind of taking a look at what those dishes look like if they're not Americanized. very, very interesting with dishes like mushi pork, because there are actually authentic origins for some of those things. Alright. So I'm pulling my pork out of the wok now that it's done. And then we're going to rinse our wok off and then start on our veggie snacks. So super, super important part about batch cooking is that we have to rinse that wok out when we're done cooking the first batch. If you don't remember to rinse your wok out, everything that stays behind in the wok, a lot of that is like really useful stuff in a lot of different types of cooking. So that's like a lot of like chicken fat and like parts of the garlic, like a lot of marinade, stuff like that that stays behind. All of those things, they gotta come out, otherwise it's gonna burn. And then you're gonna have burnt things in your wok. It's not good. While our wok reheats, I'm assembling my sauce mix right now, which I forgot to do. Our sauce is pretty simple today because there were so many things in our marinade already. But what this is, that's 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, single tablespoon of rice vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of Shaoxing wine. Both of those are giving us a little bit of brightness and acidity. Next up is 2 tablespoons of oyster sauce. If you've never used oyster sauce, it is, as the name implies, derived from the fermentation of oyster. So I like to get a lot of like fishy umami out of oyster sauce. If you can't find it, my next favorite thing to substitute it with is fish sauce. And if you can't find that, my next favorite thing after that is usually an anchovy, or anything that derives from the fermentation of fish is probably going to work okay. Cool. Alright, last up is going to be a single tablespoon of doubanjiang. Doubanjiang is derived from Chinese food and is made from the fermentation of chili, so chili pepper. So we get a lot of heat from it. In my opinion, it's probably most closely related to another hot sauce that comes from Thai food called sambal olek, which is just like doubanjiang. It's derived from the fermentation of chili. Probably what lots of folks also refer to has another parallel in Korean food with another element called gochujang, which is very, very similar. Also comes from the fermentation of chili, but has a little bit more like sweetness, and it's a little bit more paste-like in consistency. Yeah. Cool. So that's our sauce. So let's get that over first. For Ninja Nutpound. Yeah. What are we making? Yeah, today we're improvising a dish based off of things that folks over on the YouTube channel requested me to do. So I forget what all of those things are now, but one of them was various kinds of onion, so we're using a purple onion. One of them was various kinds of mushrooms, so we're using some wood ear and shiitake mushrooms. One of them, I forget what the others were, but the other one that really stood out to me was egg roll wrapper. Oh, the last one was Shanghainese flat noodles. So what we're essentially doing is following along relatively closely to a mushi pork recipe that I had written for a PF Chang's hack on the YouTube channel a couple of months ago. But we're making a couple of adjustments to incorporate a couple of things that people asked for. Mainly the thing that doesn't really add up to me is the use of Shanghainese flat noodles, which don't really belong in a mushi pork. But what I'm riffing off of today is actually another dish called Hecai Daimo, which is very, very similar to mushi pork, but it also includes noodles. Most traditionally it would include vermicelli rice noodles, but today we're going to be using some flat noodles. Yeah. What are we sipping on? Oh yeah, today we're sipping on, I think this is a hard kombucha. I was looking for beer, but I ended up drinking hard kombucha. I don't know how that all happened.
404 Ninja. Oh, Top Chef. Cool. Yeah, that's the second time I got that award this week. That's cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Anytime that you can. All right. So for our veggies, what we're looking for, just like our first fry, is a very, very hot wok. And once it's very, very hot, we're gonna add oil. And I recommend this anytime that we're batch cooking, but we want to pay attention to how much oil we're adding to the wok here at this point. Because remember that every time that you remove something from the wok, that oil that you just removed is going to eventually end up back in your wok. So what I like doing when I batch cook is, this comes from restaurant cooking, they usually do this with like a whole cup of oil. But I like doing long and then removing it. It's about half of the oil. Hopefully, if you do it correctly, there should not be water in that bowl, and it should not spit like that. What we're essentially doing is just making sure that there's not an excessive amount of oil in the wok before we start frying. Because otherwise, that's going to end up creating a very oily stir fry. Pretty much ruins the stir fry. So, first up into our wok is our cabbage. And I'm just giving this a toss. We don't need this to be fully combined before we move on, but I do like to give it a little bit of time to reduce. Yeah. Oh yeah, nice one. Thank you. Yeah. Do I season the wok? Yeah, so lots of people ask me how I season that wok. It is very, very seasoned at this point, but I didn't really do anything to season it. All I did was I just started cooking on it. In my opinion, I think that's just the best way of seasoning. I see a lot of people talking about tricks to season a carbon steel wok. I see the term bluing a carbon steel wok. A lot of tricks, I think they probably work, but the way that I've always approached it is if you're trying to break in carbon steel, the best way to break in carbon steel is just start using it. And when you first start using it, things are going to stick for sure, but over time it will stop. You just got to stick with it. Next up here are my purple onions. And just like our cabbage, we don't need these to be fully reduced either. But we are trying to cook off some of the volume from the onions before we move on. Yeah. Cool. So I'm just giving this cabbage a toss. This will probably need to go for like maybe another minute. There are still 3 different vegetables that we have not yet added. I'm holding back on all 3 of them because we want to make sure that we don't overload the wok at this point. So you'll notice that there are a lot of things in that wok right now. That's like probably the maximum amount of things that we want to let get in that wok. If we add anything else, we're going to have a lot of trouble keeping the wok hot. Right now, we're at this great point right now where things are not really dropping in temperature. It's staying relatively hot, and all of our veggies, so the cabbage and the onions, are still flash cooking properly. If we add anything else to it, it's probably going to start dropping in temperature, and that carbon steel is going to have a lot of trouble staying very, very hot. So give this maybe another 30 seconds, and then what we're going to do is pull it out, and then cook our next ingredients. Do I ever cook with Maggi Umami season? I have not. I'm not sure what that is. It sounds like it might be maybe a mushroom powder. But I have not. I've not worked with it. Alright. I think that's pretty good for our cabbage. I'm gonna pull these out. Neither of these veggies are fully cooked, and that's totally okay. We don't need these to be fully cooked. really just looking for is cooking off some of that rawness, especially with those purple onions, because they're going to be a little bit more abrasive than a standard white onion. And then next up, what I'm going to do is I'm pulling out all of this debris from our wok. And then we're going to reheat and do the exact same thing. So we're reheating our wok, and then what we're going to do is do the same thing with our mushrooms, carrots, and then our bean sprouts. And then at the very, very end, we're going to throw everything together and do our seasoning. Ooh, can we make green onion pancakes one day? Yeah. That was actually, I think that was probably I think it was the very first recipe, maybe the second recipe that I put out on the YouTube channel. So if you scroll far enough back on the YouTube channel, you will eventually find the green onion pancake recipe. And it's like pretty rough. It was like while I was still working out like how to get proper camera angles and how to properly color correct those videos and stuff, so yeah. Maggie's like Thai soy sauce. Oh yeah, okay. No, I have not used that. Lots of people ask me about like other types of soy sauce. So anytime that you see me using soy sauce, I'm probably using Chinese soy sauce. And that's mainly because I buy it in huge quantities. Also because I live in Chinatown. And in China, I don't know if you've ever tried to buy other types of cuisine, Asian cuisine in Chinatown, but it's really hard to find that stuff. So like, I've been on the hunt for Japanese soy sauce for a long time, and also on the hunt for Thai soy sauce, both of which I think are a little bit sweeter, but I have not really been able to find it, at least not in Chinatown. I would think I would probably have to drive out to Ranch 99 to find it. If I ever do that, also Korean soy sauce, and then also Kikat Manis, which is like Thai dark soy sauce. So that's like on my to-do list of things to track down for when I like finally get around to leaving Chinatown, basically. But yeah, if you're ever in Chinatown, you can try and find like even like really fundamental things like kimchi. I've been looking for kimchi for a long time, but for me to get kimchi, I would have to like drive like clear across town to find kimchi, just because you won't find kimchi in Chinatown because it's not from Chinese food. So. Are green onions Cantonese? I'm not sure. I think it comes from Hong Kong street food. I actually not positive about that though. I always thought they were Taiwanese. And that's why oftentimes people refer to it as Taiwanese scallion pancakes. Yeah. Well, ponzu is out of season. Oh, ponzu sauce is good too, for sure. Yeah, onion pancakes, not that tough to make. I can absolutely do that. I think that was also one of the first live streams I did too. But yeah, no, not super tough to make. Just 2 parts flour, 1 part water, and then just roll it really, really thin. There are a couple of techniques that are like kind of critical, but once you nail down those techniques, not that hard. I don't know why this is sizzling. Alright, so I'm adding my oil back to the wok again, so we're going to add this, we're going easy on the oil at this point, that's maybe a tablespoon or 2 of oil. And then we're going to do our long yao, which you're going to have trouble doing with less oil, but we'll do our best here. I mentioned this earlier too, but we're being very, very careful not to incorporate too much oil into our wok fry at this point, because if we add too much, eventually it's going to turn the whole stir fry really, really oily. Remember that any oil that you add to the stir fry is eventually going to make its way back into the stir fry. So this is my cucumbers and my mushrooms, and we're just going to sauce. And then the last thing that I have not yet added are my bean sprouts, and I'm doing that very intentionally because those things are stupid delicate, and if we overcook them, they basically just disappear. Bean sprouts are really easy to overcook, so what I like doing is literally adding it almost like a garnish. I'm going to add it at the very, very last second, so that they're essentially still raw. So that's what we're really going for, is basically raw. But before that, we're adding everything back to the wok. So there's our cabbage, onions, before. Real quick, what I'm going to do is we're switching over to a boiling pot of water, and then we're going to very quickly cook some noodles. So, if you have ever tried to flash cook Shanghainese noodles, be very careful with this stuff. It will be done cooking in probably about 1 minute. So I'm going to give it, I like to give those things about 1.5 minutes. I'm going to slightly undercook them today because they are going to par cook or continue to cook in the wok stir fry. But they are very, very different from how you would cook like a dry fettuccine, for example, which needs like 8 to 10 minutes in the cook. They're not nearly as sturdy as those noodles. Probably more similar to like fresh rolled noodles. So they are really, really delicate. Some of them, if they're really, really delicate, like egg noodles, for example, those noodles will cook in like 30 seconds. So yeah, bean sprouts are the shrimp of vegetables. Yeah, see, yeah, that's a great comparison. Yeah, bean sprouts, they overcook stupid quick, and like an overcooked bean sprout is like, it's really limp. It has nothing, like no real texture to it. It doesn't really do anything. It just like is a weird slimy texture in your stir fry. So if you're gonna overcook your bean sprouts, you might as well just not. That's my opinion. Alright, so to our noodles, we're doing a couple of things that a lot of Italian chefs would probably refer to as a cardinal sin. The first thing that we're doing is we did not season that water, so there's no salt in that pasta water. That's not a thing that you do in Italian cooking. We're not trying to season the water because we're not going to use it for anything, so we're not thickening up that sauce. We don't really care too much about seasoning the noodles either because they're just going to end up in our stir fry. And then the second thing that we're not going to do is we're also not going to save any of that pasta water because we don't need it. So in Italian cooking, you will very, very often see Italian chefs say reserve a huge amount of that pasta water. Usually when I make like carbonara or bolognese, I usually reserve probably up to like a cup of that pasta water because it contains a whole bunch of starch that you use to create thick sauces. So in our case, we don't really need it because we're not going to create any sauce with it, so we don't need any of that starch. It's also just generally not really a thing that we do in Chinese cooking. That's sweet, sweet pasta water. Yeah, exactly. So in Italian cooking, for sure, you cannot make Italian pasta without that pasta water, because like that's how you create creamy pasta. Lots of people think that you make creamy pasta from cream, but that's not where it comes from. It comes from the pasta sauce, pasta water. But in Chinese cooking, though, not a thing. We don't need it. So I'm reheating this wok. I'm going to let this come back up to temperature a little bit before we start throwing that noodle in. So if you were timing, though, that was a full 2 minutes, just shy of 2 minutes. That was like right around 1:45. Oh, you don't mind overcooked mung bean sprouts? Yeah, I'm assuming that's because there's still mung bean on it, so you can still eat the mung bean. Alright, so I'm dropping my noodles in. So if you're keeping track, this is one of the things that don't belong in a gluten pork dish. You definitely would not see the use of noodle, like Shanghainese noodles. That also is like a culture clash because right now we're using Shanghainese flat noodles in, I believe, a Cantonese dish. So they come from two different parts of the world. Alright, here's our bean sprouts, and then we're going to add our sauce. For those wondering, though, the reason that we're using these noodles is because we took a poll over on the YouTube channel and they asked me to use it, so I'm going to do it. And I think it's going to work. yeah, that's pretty good. I think we need a little bit more soy sauce. Much more. So I'm just adding a little bit of seasoning to taste here. And this is mostly adjusting for the undefined amount of noodle that we just added, which I think was like, it was whatever was in my refrigerator. So I think that was something like 9 ounces of noodles, some really random amount of noodles that I had left over. So because we added a really random quantity, it's a little bit bland because I don't think we had enough sauce. Alright. So I think that ought to do it. So, let's see. So I'm going to pull this out, and then we have one more thing to throw together, which is our egg. So we're going to do one last batch cook here, and I'm removing everything from our wok. We're doing one more rinse down, and then we're going to get to our fried egg. Yeah. Sea cucumber is absolutely disgusting. I rarely describe things as disgusting, but I actually agree. Sea cucumber is so gross. It's like a slimy penis. That's basically what sea cucumber is. Very strange. Thoughts on exo sauce or dry scallion? Oh yeah. Oh, exo sauce really good. On bok choy or like mustard green. Really good. Dehydrated sea cucumber. Oh, that's why they were talking about sea cucumber. Sea cucumber, I think it's like an acquired taste. It's definitely one of those dishes where it's like, it comes from like necessity. You see it a lot in a lot of like coastal cuisines. So that's where a lot of seafood comes up. I saw a lot of cucumber when I was in Busan, in Korea. And a lot of, because Busan is on the coast. Well, I guess most of Korea is on the coast. But Busan is like a coastal sea town. And I saw a lot of sea cucumber out there. And I think at one point, I was in the in the seafood market, and one literally crawled out of the bucket that I was in, and I have not eaten sea cucumber since then. It's like, this is literally a floppy penis that just flopped out of the bucket, and now I'm gonna eat it, and it's so gross. But I also acknowledge that it's a very, very common thing from a lot of different cuisines. So I acknowledge that people eat that stuff. I can't do it. It's so weird. Yeah. Brandino, do I speak Mandarin? Yidian, a little bit. Getting better at it. It's a delicacy. It is for sure a delicacy in Korea. But yeah, which is why I mentioned. I also acknowledge that it's a delicacy in a lot of cuisine, but I just can't do it. It's just so strange. It's such a weird thing. There's also a lot of similar things in Chinese food too, like 1,000-year-old eggs. Those things are really weird. Stinky tofu it's called stinky tofu. My mom says it smells like diapers. It's really delicious, but it's also pretty gross. Alright, so the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit more oil to our wok here. We're doing one more wok meow. And we're adding our egg. And our goal here is we're going to be making egg cakes. So what we're going to do is we're going to fry this up, and then we're going to chop it into slices. So this comes from a technique that you very often see in like japchae, which comes from Korean food. I'm going a little bit off book here. The original recipe that I was following along with for Hecai Daimo uses a pancake, so it just goes straight on top and then you slice it up. I actually don't think that's going to work for us today because the way that those noodles are looking, I think it's gonna stick out too much. we're going to have trouble eating it. So to adjust for the fact that we're using Shanghainese noodles instead of vermicelli, I'm going to slice these up. And this sort of reminds me of like how you would do an omelet. What we're essentially doing is rotating the wok, making sure that it just keeps on like this. So that we can get a nice pancake. Yeah. Is it 1,000-year-old egg? Is yeah, fermented in tea, but I think it's fermented for a long time, so it's not a tea egg. So definitely not like a marble tea egg. I'll tell you that. I think it's fermented for way longer than a tea egg. It's and I can prove this. Oh yeah, do I add anything to egg mixture? Yeah. So we talked about that a little bit earlier in the stream. We added two things, so there, I think I added some salt too. But there was a tablespoon of Shaoxing wine, which is probably the flavor that you'll generally associate with wok fried eggs. And then the last, probably the more important thing, was half a teaspoon of cornstarch, which is why the eggs are not overcooking right now. Is because it has a little bit of cornstarch. Prevents everything from burning. So it reminds me of like if you've ever had a wok fried egg that was like a little bit rubbery, that's because it overcooked. And by adding a little bit of cornstarch, it's going to prevent that egg from overcooking. So it slows down the cooking process, cooking time on the exterior just long enough so that you can finish cooking it. And also doesn't taste like anything either. Right. Last thing we're doing, I'm wiping down the wok, giving it a little bit of a coat with some oil on that paper towel. And should be it. Right, so for our eggs, I'm going to do what we would normally do if we were cooking hezaidamo, is I would probably throw this right on top, and it would be a nice like pancake. And what you would probably do is like cut into it, so when you go and serve the mushu pork, you chop pieces off, and that goes into the mushu pork. For today's version, I don't think that's going to work because we use flat noodles, or Shanghainese noodles, which have like a little bit more volume, and I think that would cause, like, it would probably clash with these eggs. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm slicing these up into strips. Actually, I don't know why I said that. No, Hermina, you're having a hard time hearing. Hopefully that fixed it. Yeah, the mic is coming in and out, I think. More gear issues. Alright. Yeah, so I'm just going to toss this together, and then that should be about it. You could probably even eat this. Looks like a noodle dish right now. You could probably even eat this right now. But what we're going to do, though, is I'm going to try to do, is we're going to serve this on some egg roll wrappers. So actually, these are not egg roll wrappers. So I learned this recently too. I've recently looked into this because I'm working on a video for egg rolls, lumpia, and spring rolls. We've kind of been like doing the trifecta. That's going to be in a recipe that's coming up in a couple of weeks, I think, 2 weeks maybe. So I have these wrappers. The reason that I have these wrappers is for that video. And what I discovered is that an egg roll is actually not made with spring roll wrappers like this. What it's made with is actually something that is specifically designated for egg roll, which is probably more like commonly associated with wonton wrappers, and that's how you get those like really crispy and puffy egg rolls. Those are like probably the type of egg rolls that you would associate with places like the chains like Panda Express, like American style egg rolls. What this is not an egg roll wrapper, or at least not what you would designate as an egg roll wrapper. This is actually a lumpia wrapper, which is a lot thinner. And more importantly, it's also, when I was a kid at least, this is what I would associate with how you make mushu pork, is with these wrappers. So yeah, not to be shown yet. To answer your question, I actually don't think you need to put this in a wrap. I think you could probably eat this in a bowl and it would be fine. Which is actually how a lot of people eat mushu pork too. But if we are going to eat it like mushu pork, which I am contractually obligated to do, let's try it. This is a little bit of hoisin sauce, which is probably the most important part of mushu pork. After the pork. Let's wrap it up. This is also going to be really messy. So that's basically a raw egg roll. So if you have ever made egg rolls, this is what an egg roll looks like before it is deep fried. It looks like that. And I actually had to do some of this in a bowl too, but I think it's going to be better in a bowl. Bernita, do I have a full-time job outside of streaming? Yeah, kind of. I don't have any no, I don't have any full-time jobs. I have many part-time jobs. I have a lot of part-time jobs. Probably the biggest one is booking music for an entertainment agency. So I play music for a living. I also book music for the agency that books my band. We're called Ivy Hill Entertainment. Ivy Hill Entertainment is not doing a whole lot right now because there's no live music. The other thing that I do, probably the other biggest part of the thing that I do, is I I operate a virtual kitchen, I guess, on the app Chef. So you can order most of these things on Chef. If you live in the San Francisco Bay Area, you can probably order most of these things. Yeah, I wish I could mail you some. Yeah, stagnation. Hoisin, very tasty on wok fried eggs. Alright, let's try this. This is going to be super messy. Yeah, that totally works. That's mushu pork with like a little bit more carb heaviness. It worked. We did it. I was a little skeptical when we were going to use those Shanghainese noodles because I didn't think that it would work, but it worked. It totally worked fine. And I think this is probably going to go even better just out of a rice bowl. Because this is essentially basically chow mein right now is what we're looking at, with a bunch of other random stuff in it, like onions and eggs. Plus a couple other things, so. Yeah, cool. This plating is messed up now. Let's see, let's look at this one. This one's pretty good. Yeah. Oh, that looks better on YouTube. Cool. Oh, 8 hours. Someone gave a turn on, I think. Oh, hot rock. Oh yeah, you're making pot stickers. Yeah, we actually did. I did pot stickers and gyoza on the channel. I think that was back over like around Christmas time. But yeah, pot stickers. I've been making those since I was a kid. We've been. That's like one of the things that we used to make for like Chinese New Year. Anytime that we had like a lot of family over, and that's because it's really labor intensive. I think this is probably a parallel experience to any Chinese person that like grew up in the States. Is like when you have a lot of family over, you make things like pot stickers, lumpia if you're Filipino, gyoza if you're Chinese, if you're Japanese, and then the other big one is egg rolls. And I always used to, when I was a kid, we always made those on Chinese New Year. We would make pot stickers and egg rolls because it takes a lot of work. You just like you have a lot of manpower to make those things, and it's just like a really fun like family thing that we used to do a lot. So the pot sticker recipe, it's already over on YouTube. What I was doing is I was hacking the Ling Ling's pot sticker recipe, which I think if you're in the States, it's like one of the things that you can get at like Costco and Target. It's essentially like a really iconic American frozen pot sticker dumpling. And then the other thing that we did was a vegetarian gyoza, and it was one of the first times that I did a vegetarian recipe. It worked, so yeah. Yeah, yeah, successful. Yeah, there's sea cucumbers for sure. Yeah, yeah, that's a perfect way of phrasing it. It's a grandma comes over. Yeah, so you do it when grandma's there, or like when like all of your. I always thought of it as like a cousin event, because you can't make 150 pot stickers unless there's like 20 of you. Yeah. Cool, yeah. Thanks, North Beach Films. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, everyone. My name is Wesley. This is Wu Can Cook. If this is your first time catching one of these streams, we're here every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30. Wednesdays at Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at 6:30 PST. We're not streaming on Wednesdays anymore. And new recipes does come out every Friday. So if you haven't checked out the YouTube channel yet, definitely hop over there and check that out next. We're releasing new recipes every Friday, so this Friday coming up, as in tomorrow, is going to be Thai drunken noodles, or pad ki mao, which is loosely inspired by Lady and the Tramp. We're doing something from Lady and the Tramp. That's going to be super fun, so that recipe's coming out tomorrow. After that, I believe, is the egg roll recipe that I was just talking about, and then a bunch of new stuff coming out after that. So the dish that we just cooked today, which was essentially a mushu pork, comes from a series that I've been doing where we've been hacking a lot of dishes that come from Chinese American cuisine, and taking a look at what those dishes would look like if they're not so Americanized. So with things like mushu pork, for example, it's always very interesting because a lot of those things, they actually come from Chinese food. So mushu pork, for example, actually does originate from Chinese food, which is interesting to do if you compare the two. So we take a look at like what are the American parts of mushu pork, what are the Chinese parts of mushu pork, and how do we like reconcile those two things. Whereas some of the other dishes that we do, so like we did a General Tso's chicken, for example. General Tso's chicken has no origins from Chinese food. It's just an American thing. It's just Chinese, like just American fried chicken, basically, with like a glaze. So it's basically American glazed fried chicken. So it's really interesting to sort of like deconstruct those dishes and reconstruct them in the lens of Chinese food, because they have never existed in Chinese food. So if you're interested in stuff like that, definitely hop over to the YouTube channel. Check out what's going on over there. We're working our way to 3,500 subs by the end of the month, so if you want to help us hit our subscriber goal, please subscribe. Don't subscribe if you're not interested. I don't know why people do that. Yeah, you're craving Panda Express now, yeah. I love Panda Express. I think Panda Express is delicious. I don't think it's Chinese food, but I think it's really delicious, though. Are you kidding me? Oh, what does mushu mean? I don't think it means anything. Someone can fact check me on that, but I don't think that it has any real meaning. Mu, I believe, maybe referring to. No, I don't know. I don't think it has any real meaning. I think it's an American invention. Just like Mongolian beef. Mongolian beef does not come from Mongolia. It's just a random word that people made up. So I think mushu pork is just like a random thing that Americans made up. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that that's why it's spelled with 2 O's. Yeah. Cool. Alright everyone, thanks for tuning in. Let me know if you have any more questions. Feel free and drop those in the chat. I know I missed a lot of questions today because there were so many people in the chat. But if I missed anything, feel free and repeat yourself. I'll be here doing dishes. You can answer more questions. Oh, the last thing that I'll ask or remind folks are looking for the recipes, and lots of folks have been looking for the music too. Both of those live over on the YouTube channel. So if you're looking for that stuff, that all lives over there. Cool. All right, I'll see y'all soon. Bye.
You're as sweet as strawberry wine. You're as warm as a glass of brandy. Darling, I'll stay stoned on your love all the time.
It's time to give a little to the kids in the middle, but oh, until it falls, won't bother me. I'm a rebel just for this. Yeah, your lover's in a bitch for my heart. Do you listen? Might be over now, I feel it still. I'm a rebel just for this now. Let me kick it like it's 1986 now. Might be over now, I can feel it still. Might have had your fill, I can feel it still.
The club isn't the best place to find a lover, so the bar is where I go. Me and my friends sat at the table doing shots, drinking fast, and then we talk slow. If you come over and start up a conversation with just me, then trust me, I'll give it a chance. Now take my hand, stop, put Van the Man on the jukebox, and then we start to dance. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me, said boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too, I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room, and now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. 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 Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. One weekend we let the story begin. We're going out on our first date. You and me are thrifty, so go all you can eat. Fill up your bag and I fill up a plate. We talk for hours and hours about the sweet and the sour, and how your family is doing okay. We'll even get in a taxi, we'll kiss in the backseat, tell the driver make the radio play. Now I'm singing like, girl, you know I want your love. Your love was handmade for somebody like me. Come on now, follow my lead. I may be crazy, don't mind me, said boy, let's not talk too much. Grab on my waist and put that body on me. Come on now, follow my lead. Come on now, follow my lead. I'm in love with the shape of you. We push and pull like a magnet do. Although my heart is falling too, I'm in love with your body. And last night you were in my room, and now my bed sheets smell like you. Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with your body. 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 Every day discovering something brand new. I'm in love with the shape of you. Come on, be my baby, come on. 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 Come on, be my baby, come on.